can here.
Troy, let's get down to business. So enough of the
Yeah,
small talk.
let's.
Appreciate your time as well, joining in. And for those of you that might be joining us for the first time, my name is Ray Walters. I will be your host. I'm with Epi Compliance. Also joined here by my co-host, Mr. Jose Delgado Jr. Um, Again, Jose, 20 years plus experience in healthcare consulting. Currently owns and operates a mental telehealth clinic here out of St. Augustine, Florida. So appreciate his insights. For those that might have missed last week's session, we talked about at-will employment. Was a great discussion. This week we're going to be pivoting. We're going to be talking about some legislation that I've looked up. It's called the OSHA Walkaround Rule, and I guess Jose, where we can start. There's essentially a new development of this walkaround rule. It took effect May 31st of 2024. This rule allows employees to choose a third-party representative like a union rep or a safety advocate to accompany OSHA compliance officers during inspections. Um, so this applies even if the workplace isn't unionized and even if that rep doesn't work for the organization, which I found pretty interesting, Jose. I would
Yeah, I
say
mean
this,
that's
I would say the key
that'll be. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I think the key thing that we can touch on here is obviously that raises questions about confidentiality, patient privacy, and inspection
Well,
protocols. But
so it'd be all about paperwork, right? So if I
sure,
have a third party that's not attached to the firm, they just have to sign a piece of paper acknowledging that they understand what HIPAA rights are, just like any other guest or third party that would be working for the practice. Um, my one question is, and I'm curious to see how this is going to play out, right? If I am an employee and I choose a third party person that's not part of my union or that's not part of the organization, who pays for that person's time? Because this isn't a billable service. So is this coming out of the employee that's requesting it, or is this coming out of the organization's labor hours, if you will? Like, how does that? I'm curious to see how that's going to break down. I'm sure that somebody's going to complain about it one way or the other. So that one's one piece that I'm sure is going to be very intriguing, but it should be easy to solve. The liability side of it, I mean, they shouldn't be seeing any patient records. They should be doing the
sure.
walk around with OSHA. So, I mean, they're not going to be sitting in one specific patient room or anything like that. It'll be more incidental along the lines of, hey, they see patients moving in and out through the facility or through the office or through the surgery center as they're walking through with OSHA. Um, I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see about that. Uh, this would be realistically, I don't know if I wasn't an ALF or a nursing home or a hospital, I don't know who would in the healthcare field would want to navigate, would want to have someone there. You know what I mean? Like, unless I thought that I was going to be blamed for something, then I would want an advocate for me, the employee, or my team there to protect us from any issues, right? Um, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how it's going to roll, right? Because I have seen quite a few times, actually more times than I can count. If there's a problem, it's twofold. It's either the organization is not updating and training the employees, or the employees just flat out are ignoring it when it comes to having their PPE. Thanks to COVID, people have been doing better with that on the whole, but there's still certain aspects of healthcare where we see it all the time where management's having to constantly yell at employees, hey, you don't have this on. Hey, go put that on before you do this. Hey, so these are the kinds of things where if OSHA comes through, let's use a low hanging fruit, right? I'm an infusion center. So someone could get easily stuck just because of how many times your starting lines or restarting lines or anything like that, or taking out lines. So if my employee isn't wearing gloves, something basic, right? Oh, well, they're slippery or this, that, and the other. And OSHA's walking around. OSHA's going to go and be like, well, now I definitely need to see the policies and procedures to see if the employee is just doing something incorrectly, or if your policies and procedures say don't wear PPE when you're clearly supposed to be wearing PPE.
Right.
Um, I'd be curious. I'd be curious to see why they really, really wanted to make that change of all things.
So you don't think this could be a potential HIPAA privacy risk, right?
No, no, because they're also operating
Because
with OSHA during the audit. If they were doing it outside of the audit, they would still
right.
need something signed saying, "Hey, you're going to respect everybody's privacy. You're going to keep your mouth shut about the patients you see here."
So you think
You
that would
know,
be something that was between the OSHA inspector and a third party, or would
I
that be
and
something the
I
practice would have to have in place as well? Um,
honestly, depending on the type of practice and what all OSHA's looking at, this could fall under incidental and not need anything. Kind of like, hey, I mean, if I have a cleaning service and they're cleaning my nursing home during the day,
mhm.
does it matter? Like the nursing home, the janitorial staff could be cleaning at night. Do they need HIPAA training? Do they need a waiver, or is it just incidental in nature, right? Like it just kind of depends on what's going on. If you're an ALF or hospice and you've got like biohazard cleaning companies coming through or something like that, like maybe they would. It'd be like I said, it'd be interesting. I'd have to kick it around. I'd have to see how OSHA's going to enforce this. I mean, how would even OSHA enforce this? Are they intending to ask the employees if they want a third party advocate? I
It
mean,
seems
I'm
like
I'm
they almost just
curious to
have the
see.
option to do it without the organization's consent, is what it seems like, or it doesn't seem like it's an option. Um,
Well, because my problem is that when I'm going to get audited, I can count on one hand when an auditing agency has sent a client of ours, hey, we're going to audit you at this time on this date. Right?
right.
It's very rare. Usually they'll do that for a certification if I'm going for like JACO certification, but OSHA's not involved with JACO. If I'm going to be re-audited because I've already failed an inspection or an audit of some kind, then I could see this coming into play. Um, but I don't know what this advocate would be able to do during the inspection. Are they just twiddling their
Well,
thumbs
yeah, it makes
and
you think. Is like, are they trained up on these
well, I mean,
inspections, or is
I
it
just
more so
this is one of those things where I don't think that the field is ready for the legislation that came through,
yeah, yeah.
right? Because I don't know, there has to be some guidance here as to what that third party could do or is responsible for, right? Because even if the employees are unionized and I'm a union rep and I'm walking around with the OSHA representative during an audit, what am I going to do? What am I there for? I mean, OSHA's auditing not the employees, they're auditing the organization.
I would
There's no
assume
there's
more
no
than just
there's
a.
nothing on the employees. There's no risk to the employee other than maybe having more information if I'm going to be if I'm going to be negotiating a contract soon. Maybe if OSHA says something about, hey, they don't have proper equipment, which they're never going to say during the audit, you're going to have that after the audit. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see how that breaks down. Um,
They might have technical expertise too, depending on again, the practice, maybe infection control or
I mean, again, but
chemical
these are policies
handling
and
or
procedures. So you either
yeah,
have them or you don't, right? Like
right.
you either have the policies and procedures and the employees aren't following them, or the employees are not following the policies and procedures that are set up in place. Those are the two scenarios. But I don't know where an employee advocate would be beneficial for anybody. It'd be just another chef in the kitchen, and whoever needs more chefs in the kitchen, like normally you don't need more chefs.
Right.
So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what is the purpose and what's going to be the realistic um, experience for people involved. But we'll see how it goes. I'm sure that there'll be a court case soon enough on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it just recently went into effect. It was just what, May of last year. So,
Yeah.
um,
So I mean, it may be honestly that a lot of people don't know about it, so they don't even bother doing it. I mean, it's the Fifth Amendment, and how many times do people talk? You know what I mean? Like they tell you in Miranda, they teach you in school, and people still talk. So I really don't know how that one's gonna go. But again, it would for me, I'm still looking what is the benefit and who's paying for it. Because OSHA's not gonna pay for your advocate.
no,
That we know for certain.
no, for sure.
And so I'm curious. I'm curious to see how that cookie crumbles. Is there anything else in that legislation there?
Um,
Usually they're pretty vague, so they don't say
it's
how they're
pretty
going to
vague.
enforce it.
It honestly, it's pretty vague right now. So I think this might be just one that we need to, let it mesh a little more and see what comes of it. Like you
Yeah,
said,
let's let it
once
cook. Let's let it
once
cook. Maybe in about 6 months we'll have a
once
little bit more meat to
once.
that bone. I mean, and honestly, with the end of the fiscal year or coming up right now, we may see when OSHA submits their proposed budget what what if any focus are going to put to that kind of a situation. But again, this has nothing really to do with OSHA inspections. This has everything to do with organizations and their employees. So maybe, and again, maybe I'm misunderstanding it. So if anybody's got any thoughts on this in the chat, I mean, please feel free. I'm always open to learn more. There's always with these kinds of things, there's always stuff I can learn. Um, so let's see. Yeah, I mean the third party is not attached to the organization that's being audited, nor is it attached to OSHA. Somebody's got to pay for that. What are they doing there? They're not going to
It
influence the
doesn't
outcome of the
it
audit.
doesn't say who is necessarily paying for that, which is interesting. Um, you got to assume that I don't know why, or I don't know how OSHA wouldn't be paying those people. No, I mean it
Why
doesn't
would
state
they?
it.
Why would they? It's not a requirement that auditors have to bring them with them.
True, that is true.
So again, this seems as though this is going to be
I wonder if it's just one
one
of
of
those.
those situations where people don't know the benefit that they have until they exercise it. And then there's going to be a lot of questions as to the details on that exercising of privilege, I guess, or responsibility, depending on how that goes.
I'm trying to think of some like some crazy examples of like overstepping.
I mean, again, this could be a situation where if it's a union rep, I can see some union reps that get a little bit, they take things personally.
Sure.
And so they may try to pile on if there's an issue, if there's a perceived issue. So then it's a situation where give me there's a perceived situation where my youngest is home and so he wants to play along. All right. So if if I'm dealing with that advocate, I have seen where a union rep can get a little bit too exuberant perhaps. And so what would end up happening could be the union rep finds an issue that maybe OSHA didn't see. And then we have the situation of what they're not helping the situation, right? And if I'm a union
Not for the
rep,
practice.
yeah, I
Not-
mean, if I'm a union rep, I want my union people to have a job. And if OSHA closes the business down, there goes my union people's having a job. You know what I mean? So
right.
I really don't know how where the benefit lies. Does that make any sense? Like I'm trying to
No, it
figure
does.
out where's the pro here?
It's so
I don't
vague
know.
on OSHA's website.
Huh?
It's so vague on the OSHA website.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they don't really care. They don't care if you have an advocate there or not. They're going to do their audit. It has nothing to do with them. They're not paying for the advocate. They're not requiring you to have an advocate. They're not even saying that the advocate has to be trained in any way. It could be your dad. You know what I mean? Like, but again, how does this help anybody? That's my question.
Yeah, it
Because you're
really
not
did.
going to, because that advocate is not going to be able to argue why, if there is an issue, why they shouldn't get a fine or shouldn't get written up for it. They're not going to help the employee if the employee has made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, they may not even be all that familiar with the organization's policies and procedures. So they may not even know. So I just really don't know what the purpose would be here. Not surprised
I'd
that
like to
OSHA is pretty
understand a
vague
little
about
bit more on how these individuals are trained. Like I said, it's very vague. It
it.
doesn't have that in there. You know
They're not
what?
incentivized to do so.
Right, right. Which makes sense.
They don't care if you have an advocate. I mean, it's one of those things again where it's like, if you would have told me that, hey, the organization uh, is allowed to have somebody follow the auditor around the building and escort them, that makes a ton of sense. That's what already happens, right? I don't want
You can
any
already
auditor
do that,
walking
right?
around. Yeah, they already do that.
Yeah.
I don't want any auditor from any agency ever walking around my facility without an escort. You know, just for security purposes, much less for managing my own liability. I mean, Troy, you're absolutely right if they're not trained, but the thing is that this OSHA rule is so vague because usually what happens is there's the legislation, then there comes the rule, and then there comes the guidance to the rule. But this may be so new and enough people haven't done
My biggest
anything
concern
with it
was
to
the
where they
HIPAA.
haven't bothered. Go ahead.
I was saying my biggest, I guess, dilemma was just how this plays like with HIPAA. But I guess I suppose,
It
not
doesn't
this.
it doesn't affect HIPAA really, honestly. It doesn't affect HIPAA.
So if this third party rep walked through a patient treatment area, you know,
They'd be walking through just the same way as the OSHA auditor would be. But they're not doing anything with
but
the information or
you
the
wouldn't think that anything in addition, like they would have to sign something in addition to, I guess, being a part
I
of these. I mean,
I
again,
mean
it's
if you
very vague.
wanted
We
to
don't.
be yeah, if you wanted to be extra careful, you'd get the advocate to sign the same thing as any
Would
other
they be considered a
vendor
BAA?
visitor.
A
Yeah, I
BAA?
mean, not really a BAA, but it'd be very similar to a BAA.
Yeah.
But again, anything that happened, I could easily see how we could argue that it's incidental because they're not hanging out anywhere. They're walking through the facility. If this is to go back, an ALF, a SNF, a hospice center, an infusion center, they're not hanging out in one treatment room. They're walking around the entire facility. They're going to check out this spot, then that spot, and this is where we do this treatment, and this is where we do that treatment. This is where the employees hang out. You know, like all of the they're going to be in constant movement, so it'd be far more incidental than anything else. But again, I could see how you would say, no, you can't record in my facility.
That's a good example.
So if
Photos
you
or
do have a
recording.
third party vendor, I'm not letting them video record everything through here. That's not happening. I
That's a
would
good
even
point.
argue that I'm not letting an auditor do the same thing. Now, if there's a spot check issue and they take a picture, okay, I can't really do anything about that, but that's a one picture, and we can go and make sure that there isn't any PHI visible in the
Sure.
frame of that picture, right? Or the auditor should be trained well enough to where if there is PHI or there is a person there, right, like an employee is actively doing something incorrect, not having PPE, I go back to that one because that's always low hanging fruit. It's an example everyone will understand. He can take a picture and then fuzz out faces.
Sure. Sure.
Cool. You can add that to the report. This is proof. Perfect. But you're not video recording. And that's wild. I can imagine nowadays with everybody video recording everything that could be an issue. But yeah, I really on that one, I really don't know. I really don't know where they would go and what they would do. And then what would happen after the fact. So OSHA releases a report. The third party advocate has nothing to do with it. They're not reviewing the report. They're not collaborating with the report. They may not even be able to view the report because I don't know what organization is just going to let anybody just view an audit from an alphabet agency. Any alphabet
Right.
agency. You know what I mean? Like, I don't.
It almost seems like, why are they doing this?
Yeah,
Like,
that's where
like,
I'm at. That's where I'm
what?
stuck. But again, if they want to give somebody the right, they don't have to pay for it, and it's not going to change their job. I mean, I agree with Troy. I would like somebody if my employee was to go and try to exercise that right, I would want to have a policy and procedure in place to what kind of person could be the advocate, but I don't know if that's violating the same guidance. Because by
That would
me
make
saying, I
sense.
can see right now with how vague the OSHA's guidance, the OSHA reg is, I can see how me saying, nope, union reps or lawyers, that's it. Right. But now, wait a minute. OSHA doesn't have any distinguishment about that. They're vague on purpose. So it could be very well just an employee advocate. An
Yeah.
employee advocate has no
That's
certification, they have
that's
no
nothing.
training. I mean, ostensibly, I've never seen one, but ostensibly, an advocate just means a person. They may not even be able to read. Just to be a completely, just put this completely in the most absurd side of this conversation, right? So what are they doing? I 100% agree with Troy. I mean, I don't know. Again, this I would file this under one of those things where they have the right, but I don't know who's going to want to take part.
It seems silly, you know?
Now, hold on. I'm trying to find one person, right? I don't see a line employee, and maybe we've been looking at this
No, I
wrong.
don't see, I don't, by
Maybe
technicality, it
though.
could be that, but I don't see them going that route.
However, walk with me on this one, all right? And everybody in the chat, tell me if I'm completely just. I need to go. Get off what I've been smoking, right? Get off the meds I've been on. Um,
Check yourself
if
into your own
I
clinic. No,
Well,
kidding.
if I am an office manager, right, I'm an employee of the practice, and perhaps I've been arguing that I do not have the resources to comply with all of the federal and state regulations. But I know that when this hammer comes down, it comes down on my neck. Maybe I would want an advocate there, but again, that advocate isn't going to do anything.
So you're
Right? Like, I don't know
suggesting
what that advocate
the
would do
advocate's
differently than
gonna.
if I got the report with all the deficiencies and then I'm like, hey, lawyer, they want to fire me because of all these deficiencies, but I have emails and texts and phone calls that prove that I've been discussing that these deficiencies exist. I want to address them, but I don't have the budget, I don't have the resources, and they're constantly not being granted to me. But there's no difference there. I don't know how that employee advocate changes the
It's
equation any.
yeah. I mean, it's all gonna be the same outcome, right? It's
Yeah, except
It-
now as the
I would
employee
say, if
manager, I
anything,
have
it
to
could.
pay a lawyer
Yeah,
more time to physically be there.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm trying. That's the only one that talking about it. That's the only one that I think would have an example that maybe I would want somebody there as a third party, so that way I don't get scapegoated, right? Because how many times have we seen larger organizations, hospitals, just scapegoat one person, and that person gets fired for whatever reason, and then everything that went wrong in that facility for the last 3 years, they could have been there 6 months. For the last 3 years, everything gets blamed on that one person, right? So I could see that. I
Yeah.
absolutely could. Um, but I don't know how it changes the equation if somebody's there advocating for me personally at the time of the audit. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious. Um, as a rule though, I would
Well,
100%, I would
the other
100% just internally, I would go and say, I'm not letting just Joe Schmo off the street be an employee advocate. If that is your right, that is delegated to you by the federal government, fine, but you're paying for it. I'm not paying for it. One. Two, I'm not letting Joe Schmo come from the street. They got to be a lawyer or a union rep.
you got to have
And
some
I'd
sort
leave
of
it there.
credentials, 100%.
They'd have to have some kind of credentials. Have
So
to.
you're suggesting a policy for this specifically?
I'm suggesting, yeah, an internal policy for this. But again, I would also make sure that it's perfectly outlined that this is only for the event of an OSHA audit. And if
Yeah,
you wanted to be generous, any alphabet agency audit, right? Because the outcome is still going to be the same.
of
What are they
course.
going to do?
Yeah, yeah,
They're going
agree.
to show up, they're going to twiddle their thumbs, and they're going to walk around with us. What's one more person in the group? What's the difference between two and three people? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really see how it changes the equation. I would definitely highlight these are the kinds of people I'm allowing in our organization's location. I would outline that they have to be escorted, and they have, if they are requiring payment for their babysitting, then the employee is going to be on the hook for it. That's the way I would play that, honestly. It covers the intent and it covers the words. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I agree.
I don't know what the intent is other than making sure that the employee is not getting railroaded. So there you go. I don't know how anybody would go and figure out that an OSHA audit is occurring and that they are being specifically targeted. So I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot here that I just don't know how any of it would happen. If an office manager doesn't know that an audit is happening, I highly doubt that the front desk person or an RN at an infusion center or an RN in a nursing home is going to know before the organization does that an audit's coming. You know what I mean? So even organizing all this, the logistics, all this sound awful. And I'll tell you right now, if I'm an organization manager, I am not going to be looking like we are being uncooperative with an alphabet agency for a bloody advocate.
Right.
If I have to choose somebody to piss off, I'm pissing off my employee before I piss off an alphabet agency. It's just a numbers game. You know what I mean? Like the federal government has a lot more money to take me to court over than you do as an employee. So figure it out. I guess that would be that case. I'm glad I'm not sounding crazy, Troy. So, and it's not to be, and again, it's not to be mean. It's not to say that I'm anti-employee or anti-union, which I'm not. It's just that I don't see how this all works. I can only delay so long when an audit is occurring because I don't know beforehand. They show up with a badge, they say, "Hey, I'm here to audit your business." who's the office manager. The most I can do is say, hey, you're going to have to wait for legal representation for the practice. And then I scramble to call our general counsel or our legal department or our compliance department to come down and walk through, right? But it all depends on what are my level of resources. If I'm a small office, a small infusion center that's attached to a private practice, I don't probably have a legal department. I maybe have a compliance person. You know what I mean? So then that's where the general counsel, hey, general counsel, I need you down here like 45 minutes ago because I got somebody with a badge over here. Perfect. And this is where having, if you're a smaller practice, I know lawyers are expensive. I know it, and I understand it. But keeping one on a cheap retainer for an insurance scenario or in case of emergency break glass, depending on the area of US that you're in, you can probably do it for like a couple $100 a month. Because you're not going to be, if you're a small practice, the likelihood of you having all of these issues is very tiny. But that's not to say it's not possible, right? Like,
Yeah.
so we got to hedge our bets, a couple $100, keep it as a retainer. If I'm a medium to large size practice and I don't have a lawyer that the practice uses, I'm concerned, right? Because the only reason why I wouldn't have an external counsel if I'm a medium to large size practice is if I've gone ahead and said, screw it, and brought a lawyer in to be legal. And he is an employee now, right? So, like, these are the kinds of things that I would go and, all right. So, going back, remember, Alphabet Agency, someone on the badge comes in and says, hey, we're auditing your practice today. I need to do a walkthrough. Sit them down, say, perfect. We'll get management here with you or legal here with you as soon as they can. That is your right as an organization. I guess at that point in time, you inform the employees and let them know, hey, if you want an advocate here, you'd better get them over here. Got as long
Yeah.
until the lawyer gets here, like clock start, go. Yeah, that's the advice. That's
Is
again,
that the scenario though? It's like you don't have an attorney. You don't have that in your back pocket. So you have no choice but to do an employee advocate. Is that
but if I'm an owner, right? If
right?
I'm an
Right.
owner or if I'm an employee, do I even want an advocate there that doesn't know what they're doing?
Very true. It's almost
You know what I
like
mean? So
the
I'd have to
owner.
almost
Hey, I'll
establish
be
the
the I'll be
relationship
the advocate.
beforehand. Yeah, I'd have to almost establish the relationship beforehand. So it's almost better to just say screw it and just have management walk them through. Or if you have
Definitely,
somebody,
definitely.
since you were mentioning HIPAA earlier, someone part of your incident response team,
No, definitely.
or your OSHA officer, right? So like that's the way I would play that, honestly. If this scenario were to occur, I'd say, hey, nice, have a seat there, wait till legal or compliance department comes through and escort you through. We'll get you everything that you need. If you've got a list, let me get that list. Because it's going to take time, anyways,
Yeah.
right? And then that's where you're just buying time. Then if you have the advocate, if an employee says, I want an advocate, then perfect, boo boo, call them up. It doesn't say we have to help them.
No.
It doesn't say that we have to have them on call. This isn't a scenario where it's like, hey, I have to provide translation services in the top 4 languages in my area if I'm dealing with a Medicare patient, right? Like that's not the same.
Right.
So maybe the advocate is just a translator. I don't, but that's on the employee. That's not on us. So that one's odd. I'm curious to see where the court cases will go because I'm sure there's going to be a court case. Stuff like this that are just random like that. I would love to. I would love to. Maybe we can do a deeper dive on it and see where the proposed rule was and see where it came from. Because stuff like this only comes out if there's money behind it or if somebody specifically asked for it. And a lot of people had to have asked for it. So I'm curious. But Anybody got any questions on this? Anybody got anything maybe that we've missed on this spitballing? Um,
I
yeah,
posted the
it's
article in chat for everybody as
okay.
well if you want to reference.
Perfect, perfect. And then yeah, I mean,
I'm
then if
sure.
I'm in, go ahead.
I was gonna say something. We'll do a little more. We'll do a little more digging. I think we can reapproach this maybe in a if we find something that's worthwhile, we can certainly have another webinar on and talk about it.
And I go back. The federal government is in fundraising mode. Has been since the Obama administration. So where's the money for the agency on this? You know what I mean?
That's the
Like
thing. It
usually they're giving themselves more auditing
doesn't say.
power or different kinds of auditing abilities. Rarely are they just being magnanimous and just saying, "Hey, I'm going to give you something."
Can't. No.
Nothing in life is free. I'm curious to see where the other foot is. Like where what's going on
There's some
here?
sort of commit. There's some sort of commission involved if they ding you for something.
Yeah.
That's the
Like I
incentive.
said, the only person I would see wanting to have an advocate after really playing this through, and I've been thinking about this since, for the last 4 or 5 days. If I'm an office manager or if I'm maybe compliance, like I said, like I'm going to be in management position and I am afraid that I'm going to be scapegoated. Because then you have like we were talking about last week. Then I have the discrimination, then I have the wrongful termination because they just picked some crap when I have evidence
Uh,
showing that I knew this was
to
a
get you
problem.
on.
You knew
Yep.
this was a problem. You just didn't want to address it for whatever reason. We don't have the funds. I don't think it's important. It's too much money. Even if I have the funds, it's even worse if I have the funds and I don't think so I'm very, very, very curious to see how this goes. But again, it's OSHA. If you're getting audited by OSHA, what are you doing? OSHA's an easy one.
It is the
It's got to be a
easier, that's for
whistleblower.
certain.
It's usually a whistleblower. And
And
last time we
there's been a
dealt
lot of
with it
medical waste inspections here in Florida. I feel like
in
as of recent.
Florida, we've been working with a couple of clients that were dentists or
Hmm.
and it was a disgruntled employee that whistle blew to OSHA and OSHA just sends a 30-cent letter to the practice to where the practice goes and proves no, we have policies and procedures addressing this. This is the training that addresses this, and then poof, the audit disappears. OSHA's not going to walk in your door for no reason.
In other words, you got to respond.
You got
If
to
you
respond in a timely manner.
if
Usually,
you
they don't give you
don't,
much
then
time. So if you see something
yeah,
from the federal government, don't play.
hmm
Don't play. Get
absolutely.
done. So I know most people were like that, but in case you didn't think so, pay attention when it says from the federal government, from DC or wherever, or if it's a state from the capital, of whatever state that you're in. So
Yeah,
cool.
don't
Well,
trash those.
if I don't see any questions there, a little bit of a short one today.
Well, I was going to say, yes, if anybody has any questions for us, please feel free to put it in chat. If you guys have any topics you'd like us to discuss down the line, please let us know. Certainly, I know we've done a couple episodes on some topics some of the audience suggested. So again, anything that's going on in your personal at your practice, let us know. We'd be happy to cover it. I know there's a couple of things you threw at me, Jose, that we might
Yeah,
be
we
able
can
to.
go over them next week.
Oh, I
Because
was gonna say
we were basically gonna be doing.
we
Go
got the
ahead.
Ascension update.
Yeah, so this was gonna be next week is gonna be we're looking at it as like these aren't big enough to be their own topic, but they're big enough to where it warrants mention. We have 5 or 6 different pieces. One thing on Ascension, which I was very intrigued by, just because after a breach, everybody knows what the immediate cost is, but not long term or how long it actually affects the practice. So this was a situation where we could really dive into that momentarily. And then just last night here in Florida specifically, but it's all over the US, there's a rather large case with 14.6 billion with a B in fraud that the federal government's been throwing newsletters up and press releases all about. So that one's an interesting one. That one I think has a little
Certainly.
bit more teeth to slide into, and we can really go into. And then there was a third one too. Do you remember what that third one was, Ray?
Uh, Let me check
There was a
here.
third one, and I can't remember what it is.
Hang on. I got the Ascension article. Got that
It was
bookmarked.
one that you
I
were
got the
bringing up.
Department of Justice article booked. Um,
There'll be one or two more there. We're probably going to have more than what we'll be able to
I
cover,
know,
but
I know for the month of July, we're pretty much set on a topic idea. I was going to talk to Dr. Delgado about doing something not next week, next Tuesday, but the week after. That'd be the 15th. Because I know he's put out a couple of new articles lately as well. And then
perfect.
July 22nd, we'll be interviewing an IT director and getting his
Okay.
insights. And then on the 29th, we'll be interviewing with an Avexia administrator. Avexia is a lab company, and
Okay.
sort of doing an interview with them as well. So, but like I said,
Perfect.
anybody that has topics, let us know. We'd be happy to discuss. And if anybody has any questions or concerns or just needs any additional guidance, please don't hesitate to reach out to Jose or myself. That's what we're here for. That's why we do these webinars, is to bring the awareness and obviously help out where we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely, guys. So if you want to replay this one or any time, we're on YouTube and Spotify as well.
Yep, we are on a YouTube, Spotify, and Apple podcast. I'm gonna just throw our YouTube channel in chat that all the videos will always be seen here first. Usually we'll get it up by the next day, so just stay tuned for that. If there was somebody that you wanted to maybe view this video or any of our other videos, please feel free to share them to that link. But other than that, Jose, I appreciate your time. Everyone, I appreciate you taking the time out of the day to join us. I hope you learned something of benefit, and I look forward to sort of diving into these two. I know we've done a webinar on Ascension in the past, but also
Yeah. Yeah, and
touching.
maybe we'll going into it, we'll recap what happened with Ascension. But for me, it was just they've notated the cost.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
Seeing
was
the
one for me where I
financial
was like,
impact is
that's
going to be
interesting.
interesting.
Yep, yep.
Um,
So, and perfect, guys. Well, then stay out of trouble. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out.
Likewise, thanks, Jose. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.